And we are live. My name's JP Berg, and this is Dumb the Wiser. Today I'm joined by Canadian painter and writer, Mr. Michael Adamson. How are you doing, sir?
I'm great, JP. How are you doing?
Good, man. It's good to talk with you again. We had a conversation a few months ago, and we've been interacting on X a little bit, so I thought it'd be nice to have you on, and we can just delve right into it.
Super.
So what's your main concerns right now? What are you focusing on personally regarding Canada and our trajectory?
I am trying to clarify a communicable message about a solution that pivots off the popular discontent.
That's pretty good.
Okay.
So do you want to elaborate a little more on your solution?
Yeah, I have a thing that I've developed called the Cansit, which is like Brexit, except for it would obviously, instead of detaching from the EU, this proposal involves detaching from globalization itself, gradually creating a completely closed loop system that advances these ideas of abundance, which counters scarcity, which negates debt. So basically, there's a whole bunch. It's like chess. There's a whole bunch of different moves set up, and then at some point it becomes the ideas have to be built and clarified so they can be communicated easily. And that took years to develop the concepts, really, and then to frame them out, to have them critiqued, and then, like everything, it goes quickly. Then just recently, somebody who is going to organize a rally this week in Toronto, I don't know where she's gone now, but she helped me by producing this document, which I think I may have sent to you. And it sort of is a really slick graphic, which is beyond my capacity to produce personally, even though I'm a visual artist, that she put the inputs in from some text that I had provided her. And so she had come up with a very clear thing of this. And this, I think this may have been one of the things I sent you, is the two-path PDF, you could call it.
Okay, so what we'll do for the audience is after the episode, I'll leave this link on my my X, and you could just link those documents underneath it, and people can access it that way.
Great.
So let me get this right. So it's an exit strategy from globalization. So it's an exit strategy from the central banking apparatus, I would assume.
Yeah.
Which would have a national bank in mind, or a national domestic way of creating credit.
Yep. Yep.
Okay,
The whole credit system would change, actually, because credit, it's a binary, right? Credit requires debt, and if you don't have scarcity, you can't create debt. So debt and credit are canceled out as inputs.
Scarcity has been so normalized in our culture that people don't understand it. They just think that's the way it's supposed to be. We're all supposed to be hustling every day to propagate our lives, essentially. And you get it a lot on the right? Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You know what I mean? Like, be more self-sufficient, be more efficient. But I mean, at this stage of the game, it's like the Ponzi scheme of the present system is coming to its end. And it seems like Mark Carney is just deliberately on a managed decline. Like, he's just intentionally crashing the Canadian economy. I can't see it any other way.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you, if you want to go down this road and you go into the idea of building psychological profiles of world leaders. So there's a whole tradition of doing that. I don't know if you ever heard of that before, but basically that's something that happens. And when you do one for him, the profile is pretty interesting, and it certainly isn't somebody who you would trust with your company. And it's funny because I was looking for some support material for the conversation today because I knew we were going to get into some really esoteric stuff that needed some grounding. This book here, The Hour Between Dog and Wolf, is a book about risk-taking gut feelings and the biology of boom and bust. So it talks about how neurology and neurochemistry is affected with positive reinforcement. And so when you're on a cycle of winning, of domination, your brain is producing a whole bunch of chemicals and everything's organized for that. And you can get excited and you can take risks that are not balanced with the general reality because you're not really in the general reality, you're really on a winning streak, right? Now, when the winning streak is challenged, it can induce a great rage and it can induce a great collapse of cognitive capacity because once that winning streak is interrupted by a loss, it begins to stumble and it can go in all sorts of directions and it become the wolf. And if you think about the Fabian, the wolf in sheep's clothing, if you think about the predator, then, you know, the hour between dog and wolf, that dog that's there to help us, Quirinus, the Roman god of state, when that thing is given the wrong directions, isn't leashed properly, it can become the wolf. And one thing is, you know, at some point in every civilization probably wants their dog to be like a wolf. It's ill-advised. So don't get into those circumstances where your dog has to become a wolf. That's, you know, getting into the metaphorical. But anyway, so brains change when you're on a winning streak, and when they're challenged, they stumble and they go crazy. In 2007, the economic system kind of collapsed. 2012, it collapsed. So these guys kind of went crazy, emerging this character called the financial psychopath. If you overlap this term called the financial psychopath with the term economic hitman, and you align those, you begin to get a profile, a psychological profile of the type of leader who would use the charade of nationalism to conduct extreme, extractive interlocks. So basically, yes, unexpectedly, we are in terminal phase extractive globalization, and it just continues like this for decades until there's like nothing left, and it's a very interesting situation, or the organic backlash that's beginning continues to follow the patterns, the general patterns in geopolitics globally, and we begin to face, not in the fringes, but in the mainstream, we begin to face conversations about this. Cans it and all that business. Like, well, what would we do? And Alberta wants to go separate, but they can't because they have a few, gravity and reality-based issues that make it so that you couldn't enact any true liberation economically because you have to have these certain ingredients. A nation is scaled to have those ingredients. Provinces aren't. And that's part of why nations were built that way and provinces were built that way, is because united they can function because they have coasts, but independently they can't go it alone. They have to be interlocked with other people. Canada has this unique situation where we can be 100% Robinson Crusoe and imagine the advantages of just going on holiday Robinson Crusoe for a couple of months and then come back to reality and work. You'd be so much better, efficient, rested up, optimistic, new plan, ready for promotion, you know, the whole thing. And that's sort of what Canada needs, is this huge psychological intervention that has real money attached to it, real future, real clear logic. So that's what I've been working on.
Interesting. I've been of a similar mind. I've been doing a lot of research into Douglas social credit,
Sure.
and that type of a system, which would alleviate a lot of the problems, because we could talk about independence, but independence presently in this globalized model, it doesn't happen at the national level. You have to detach yourself from the chains of the central banking oligarchy. You
Yeah.
have to, we require transformational monetary reform at this junction. If we're going to do anything, if we're going to escape getting sucked into this neoliberal technocracy that's seemingly assembling itself.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's one of the three historical precedents for this type of reform. And each time these reforms are proposed, they become more complex because of the technology and cognitive capacity and psychology has advanced 50 years, 60 years, 100 years. So that what I'm dealing with is quantum. So it's exactly like that. It's Georgism, but it's quantum. So it's completely, the mechanics are different. And the principle is similar because they're trying to get away from rent-seeking investment, which is non-productive. It's just extractive. And if that's clear enough. So when you
yeah, it's again, and I have to speak to the normalized situation with the extent of the debt. Like, a lot of people are just unaware. I think we're intentionally underinformed regarding monetary policy and basic economics, just as well as I feel that we're intentionally left uninformed regarding philosophical concepts. I think
I would
it works with
say
the regime's
malinformed.
interest.
I would say
Malinformed, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it's once you start to understand wealth creation and the monetary system, it's hard not to see that that's where most of our problems lie. The scarcity-based model, that's it's almost like the carrot that they have to dangle in front of the modern worker in order to keep the whole corrupt farm running.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why if you just adopt a different headspace, and so like if you think of that way, headspace, you think of executive mandate, kind of two, like one's a suit term, and one's like a concert term. If you change the headspace of the executive mandate, that shifts the whole thing. And if the headspace of the executive mandate is just extract like a barbarian and live like pretend to be civilized, then your civilization is barbaric. And globalization is a barbaric civilization, truly, because it's taken all of the wealth of nations and genius of generations and technology of the future and used it to do the most petty type of one-on-one scam of, I'm going to set you up, you're not going to do well, and then I'm going to get everything you had as collateral because that's what you put up against this thing. And even if you did well, I'm going to make it so you couldn't do well. That's it. So I can get your stuff. Why? You have stuff already. No, you don't get it. We borrow money to buy things that are distressed so we can make more money. Why do you do that? Well, why do I breathe? This is what an extractive financier is. And
Yes.
it's like, why do you do what you do? That's just, what do you mean? You're challenging my basic existence. The reason for me living and justifying every single thing I've done is founded in the principles of extractive finance being reasonable and ethically acceptable ambition for a young guy to get into.
Yes, it's definitely the issue of our generation. It's the issue that our generation has to face. I mean, it's the Ponzi scheme of it all is coming to its end. So now is the time for viable trajectories to offer people solutions outside of this. And it first starts with educating people, which is no easy feat considering anyone who's talking about this is being like systematically suppressed on the algorithms.
On the algorithms, my brother.
Yes, sir.
Bankrupted, kicked out of their university positions. That's like these two characters. This is Gen 1 of the Culture War 2015. So these are the first wave of executive operations specialists, the counter OSS. That's these kids. And they start going in, oh no, you got to protect the nation. This globalization thing's a problem. And then she's gone. Boom, he's gone. No, it's these.
So just for the audience, do you want to give the titles of those books,
yeah, sure,
and the authors' names?
Okay, so for me, this 2015 generation is like, that's like, if you weren't there in 2015, where were you? However, it's an age thing. Some people were 15. Some people were probably 10 in 2015, for God's sake. So yeah, you're right. Here we go. So this is Lauren Southern. She's an incredibly maligned character. She's called horrible things by the left globalists, but she wrote a stunning treatise, readable, condensed treatise, which is part of the new genre, which is pretty important on self-publishing of this stuff. She's first wave kind of thing. This is what that new stuff looked like, the plastic covers, the black and white text, do it online. It was great. These products, you sell them, you get barcodes, you can make these. Everyone can make these now. But when she did it, she was like leading ahead. This was a hardback version by Richard Dusan, and he wrote Canada in Decay, Mass Migration Issues. And this corresponds globally to a very important book called, just wait a second, a very important book called, anyway, I'll find that one in a second, but it follows up on this concept called the end of history. And this guy recanted and said, oh, I made a mistake, history's not over. But this was the Bible of the neoliberal, yuppie, let's get rich, yuppie 2.0, let's get rich, Gen X, innovation, brilliance, working for the dark side. That was the Bible that normalized being totally immoral. For our generation, for the people that came to political age in 92 to 2000. And then in the 2015, he recanted. It's not the end of history. History is just going on. And so a lot of books, right? I mean, it's not like this stuff is fringe. It's not like this stuff is not well publicized or its own massive publishing microculture. And it's huge. This is a really important book. Niall Ferguson, The Great Degeneration. Now, so this is Niall Ferguson is an intellectual from the English school of kind of leftist intellectuals, but he joined the common sense revolution to some extent. And he's a masterful articulator of, from a certain point of view, neoliberalism and the effect of hollowing out the public institutions, making everybody selling off the public housing to the people that were tenants. How were the tenants of public housing in London supposed to afford a mortgage? So they needed a special mortgage, and that meant special rates, and that meant all sorts of special, you know the deal, right? So the whole idea of liberation as a further mechanism of extractive finance. So that was this kind of first generation of it. Then I would say the middle generation would be the when people started talking about the woke, and that follows up on this a little bit. And then the final sequence was kind of the COVID. And I think it was at the COVID one, that's when I have books. I didn't bring them down for the set. I know here. Anyway, there's a sequence of important basic books about the COVID thing, Fishman's Fraud, and stuff like that. And they kind of are the bookend, or they pivot to this new thing, which is everyone's talking about extractive finance. People are beginning to say globalization is the problem. Now, also, there's this thing of nationalism is a danger. So we've got this perfect thing going around and around. That's exactly how change happens. So gradually, globalization is dying. Nationalism is rising. People will need to define what is nationalism. They will need to have executive mandate guidance, totally abstract stuff. You got to manifest it into this type of thing. There'll be a marketplace of ideas. People will compete with their graphics, networks, and ideas, and we will have an outcome amongst, in terms of populism, digital populism. What do the people want? And that's inevitable. That's just, the technology cannot help but provide that outcome.
Are you concerned? Because I agree with you. I think,
Nice.
provided the conditions that we're seeing continue today, that people are going to be thinking in these routes, and you're going to see this market of ideas, and you're going to see the better ideas start to come to the top. But my primary concern is that the banksters are going to push us into a global conflict, seemingly like they're leveraging their interests to foment this world war that we're seeing.
Okay, so in 1971, they decided to go to full eugenics, genocide, reduce the population from its potential of 12 billion in the year 2000 to whatever it was, like 7 billion. So they were pretty effective. Then they created the ideological platform for bringing the concerns that no one cares about into the mainstream for 2 decades. The war on terror, the war, the blah, 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 all that bullshit, and total lies. And it was the clash of civilizations. Now that failed miserably, and then they had to do a whole bunch of other nonsensical stuff that they just can't. It just won't stop. What's going to happen is not going to stop. So they just keep putting further and further more brutal and ill-conceived, primitive bulwarks up against the flood, the ocean of populism globally.
It seems entirely proportional relative to their desperation. I think they're desperate to prevent this from happening. And I think it's really to our advantage in some ways. It's almost like the system itself is like a fistful of sand. And the harder it's squeezing us, the more sand is slipping through its fingers. The more people are realizing the flaws, the systemic flaws in our system itself. And that's going to further fuel the sands of change, so to speak.
When the octopus looks down at its tentacle that it has upon the people, it's severed. They look at a stump. The only thing that's squeezing the people is like a neurological impulse. It's a zombie. Huh? How's that? The zombie squid has lost its tentacle, and now it's a zombie. Globalization is a zombie. And I wrote a booklet, whatever you want to call it, called MK Woke. And it actually describes how sociology and what we call MK Ultra were used to squeeze the people. But that's been severed. MK Woke is just a flip-flopping tip of an octopus's arm that's been cut off, and the people, there's a little bit of sand left in it. There's a little bit of people left in it, but the world's moved on. Woke is dead. DEI is dead. All that stuff is effectively at an executive operational level. That's finished. It has lingering effects administratively in the government coding and everything, and it will have for a long time. That stuff takes a long time to reframe. But
my concern is the reflexivity aspect. It's like they pull us like a pendulum so far to this woke left that we're seeing it swing back to more of a far right type of an ethos. We're
not
seeing
by
a
anybody,
lot of people.
not by anybody legitimate. There would be some people in the mix audience, kind of like NPC with lines, with like 1 or 2 lines. Might be self-generated, but they're not real. And then at a larger structural level, there's nothing like it. There's nobody in Canada intellectually that represents anything that is legitimately far right by any means. And the ethno-nationalists don't even understand why their position is actually far left. So, I mean, there is no far right in Canada.
The whole left-right, I call it a left versus right slave dialectic. I think we've been manipulated with this for a very long time. It's intended to kettle us into these various sides of the faction, and it's also there to parameterize the conversation. Like
Yeah, big time.
if they're controlling the opposition, that sets the parameters for acceptable discourse.
Yeah,
So anything that starts to challenge that orthodoxy from outside of those parameters,
yeah,
they're able to then dismiss rather effectively.
yeah. That's
But
what,
I
and I
like your
also,
view on it. You're very optimistic on this, which is refreshing.
well, I also I have crafted a practice that I deploy a lot, which is cognitive undermining of leftward bias, because that destabilizes it mentally, collectively. So yeah, I'm optimistic, but I am sawing the leg off a Trojan horse, and there's people inside the leg. It must be done, John Paul. It must be done.
I agree. I agree. So I want to get into your plan a little more. I've been doing some of my own research regarding macroeconomics. So and I'll tell you, man, like I know about a lot about history, psychology, philosophy, but economics is not my area of expertise. So if you could kind of very give me like a rudimentary explanation of how it would function.
Yeah. So it's a socioeconomic super system. The economics are sociological. It combines both of them and it sits on top of both of them. So it's not economic theory and it's not sociology. It's like a socioeconometry. It's a superposition. Actually, it's not a blended thing. It's actually a lens that is just clearly designated as a thing that looks at this and this, puts them together, and through that, we can analyze how much popcorn is funded by the state, because some popcorn will be funded by the state.
So it's to
Not
give
all.
us to give us a more accurate representation economically of what we require in the realm of like productivity, wealth creation.
Yeah. So wealth is the counterbalance to poverty. So we're operating in a superstructure. Remember, we're looking from very high level down at these things philosophically and stuff. Okay. So wealth is a byproduct of poverty. You have to have poverty to have wealth. So if what you have with wealth is the association of positive acquisition for your life support, you and those, your people, your kin and all that, then wealth is a positive thing because it helps you live healthier and longer with your kin than other kin. So there's biological logic that helps you survive. So there's lots of reasons to want to be wealthy. If that wealth is measured on relativity, I have more than these people, so I'm wealthier. They have less, so it's poverty. Then you really do get into wealth and poverty, which is not necessary in a system of abundance, nor is really wanted. People can do what they want and make as much money as they want and whatever. People can make as little as they want, whatever. But basically the idea of walking around in the street wearing rubber bands and newspapers for shoes in a pair of, I'm just having a vision of things I've seen in the third world, right? Of people who are really poor walking around like wearing, with a garbage bag as underwear, begging, and nobody will talk to them because they're so poor and gross and like they're just pariahs, right? That should not be in any way possible in our in our zone, in our area, Canada. And anything that approaches that, either mentally, physically, morally, psychologically, economically, anything that is desperate, broken, it really needs remediation. And I can see that we have most of our systems are working in it's not their lack of integrity. They've had the integrity option removed from them. So they're operating in a disingenuous fashion for the destruction of the nation. They can't stop it and they can't get off. They're stuck. And so that's when you need the executive overlay. You need someone to just say, hey, this is rubbish. here we go. This is the new marching orders. And then the hierarchy that exists just flows through. Now, in the 21st century, who is in charge of society? And this is a hugely important question, and one that really takes advantage of abstract thinking. So if I had to say right now, if you had to say, who, and just that, so we can go back to it, who do you think is in charge of society? Who do you think runs Canada?
I would say the banking oligarchy. I mean, I could say City of London or terms like that, but I don't necessarily think it's specifically the banking oligarchy, but it's whoever's above that, whichever families over the course of the last couple hundred years have consolidated their influence and wealth to be powerful enough to continue this Ponzi scheme, this extractive financial apparatus, which is plundering the world.
Yeah. I would say that those people are there in the cast of characters, and I would posit that those are the investors. And what we suffer from is not the investors, we're the investor class. What we suffer from is the manager class that uses a zombie system, a zombie thinking, to manage these vast fortunes. And if you use this zombie system, you get big returns. The only problem is if you use the zombie system, the actual net returns for everybody are really bad. Like I just saw something on Instagram where the 5 richest families with the most executive control, they were actually named. And I was like, oh shit, man. When that stuff starts going viral, you're like, oh, that's not good. Like that's not good. You don't want to be near that position. And that could be walked back. It must, and all that stuff. So when you have these approximate oligarchies that are actually proxies for something, they owe money. If they don't pay off those loans, they don't get the credit, they lose the property, they lose the clubs, they have to be part of this economic system. They have to, it's got insurance is involved and all sorts of stuff is involved. If they take one wrong step, they're out of the loop. If they're out of that loop with that monthly burn, 35 grand a month, 40 grand a month, personal burn. If they're on that and they get cut out of the loop, bam, they're in a world of hurt. And so they're the elite, the ultra elite are so hamstrung by the globalist rentier finance method by which they are captured that they have no choice to enact the slavery down the system. So then you go, okay, well, what could ever get people off their back? An entire national agenda that kicked it? Yeah, that's what America's doing. Brexit did the theoretical. Brexit did the poetry. America did Brexit did the test. Brexit did the beta test. And then America did the first run at it, trial run, real run, whatever this Trump admin is. And then the world is going that way. There's tiny little pushback, but the world is moving past rentier finance globalization. And in third world countries, it's been horrific and ugly. In first world countries, it should be beautiful. We should use this opportunity to really transcend a lot of the hang-ups people have from the last 300 years about each other and the groups we represent and all that. Oh, that's nonsense, right? We're all so lucky to be here in Canada. There's gold and oil everywhere. We just got to get these pirates off the backs of the innkeeper, because he tries to be friendly with the people, but the pirates come in and say we need more. It's like the mafia.
Yeah. I think I say banksters, but I'm not naive. I know that there's a powerful network above this. Like wherever the top of this pyramid of influence and power lies. I mean,
yeah.
I'm a spiritual person. I'm religious, so I mean, I think it's evil. It's evil in its purest form at the top of this. At least these people are being influenced by it.
They just have neurological issues. It's chemical. It's neurochemical. And if you look at the transgenerational, you find a family that's been doing this for 400 years. You actually begin to look in the genetics. And you're like, oh my God, it's recorded that there's like genetic anxiety and schizophrenia at way higher levels in the people from the ethnic cohorts that occupy many of these financial managerial positions, they have recorded genetic traits for mental illness. When they get into the game of being competitive with money, they can go totally insane. So we have a thing that I think, if you can believe it, what happened was the system became psychotic. So we're living in a psychotic system, and it wasn't psychotic originally. It was just an asshole. It was just a jerk. It would kill you. Like the captain of the slave ship would kill you for sure. So it's always been a psycho, but now it's like it's so.
Well, now it's desperate. Now it sees.
Well, it was always pretty desperate.
You know.
I mean, a captain would have been a pretty desperate aristocrat. Why the hell would you leave? You know what's out there. That's why you have so many cannons and stuff, because it's a dangerous mission, but the rewards are huge because you owe a ton of money, or you live in a culture like Christopher Columbus did, where you had to have a ton of money to even just survive, because they were like kicking all the Jews out of Spain. So he's like, well, I better become an aristocrat with a lot of power and leave Spain. So he discovers the New World in an agreement with the Spanish crown, prior arranged. And so the people that just started the whole thing were crazy. They were running from debt. They were running from war. They were running from hate. They were running from all sorts of stuff. And they landed here. And if you want to see what 500 years of history does, boom, from whatever I guess you would say at that point it was the Gutenberg press and the art of the cotton sale. So there's the cotton sale, the Gutenberg press, discovery, then we get cotton mills. Well, we get the transatlantic slave trade. And this is all servicing debt and creating wealth and capturing land and displacing people. The pattern never stops. It just keeps going and going and going and going. There's a great movie from the 1970s by Michael Cimino, an amazing action movie director, called Heaven's Gate. And it's a wicked Western where Christopher Walken plays like the hitman for the bankers. And he crosses paths with an old buddy, a guy he fought with, on the same side in the Revolutionary War or something like that, but he is with the people. So Chris Christopherson is with the people, and Christopher Walken shows up, and the movie happens. And in the end, the bankers use the U.S. Army, and they show up and shoot everybody, because that is land clearing, and that was like 1890. That continues to the 1930s, and then you get this inversion, which is sort of the area of my specialty on the side, which is studying how, I call it MK woke. So studying how all the principles of the left were actually devices of what they thought was the right, which is actually just the oligarchic psychology, to use that Masonic, symbology. It's the architecture of power, the way they see it. And at the top is a headspace, is a system, BlackRock, Aladdin, rub that magic genie and get what you want. It's right. That's Aladdin. That's Larry Fink, BlackRock, top of the capstone. And how's that? Pretty good.
That's pretty good. It's you speak in such abstract terms. Like,
is it too abstract? Sorry.
No, I can follow it. I worry about some of the audience. I find it's a very intriguing way of communicating. I love our conversations.
It's a vernacular though. I mean, it's not Pepe woke, but I mean, it's not Q talk. It's not.
No. But I'm not talking about
it is a
content.
semiotic. You know what this is, and this is really hard for people to. And I'll say it. Okay, like I will carry this into the room and take the heat. Okay. This is the cognitive leap. To be able to move this quickly, cognitively, linguistically about these subjects, that is the quantum abstraction we need. So everybody has to be able to talk about it in their own lingo, this fast, this range. They have to have these concepts. It has to mix, and they have to have a thesis. And everyone will. And if everyone's honest, they already do. It's just they can't necessarily articulate it, but everyone has a onboard bias system that is full, cradle to grave. It's complete. It's an intact ontology. Everybody has one, right? And then there's reality. So what you want to have is people with their onboard ontology, you want it to overlap with reality. And that is what Mockingbird was done to dislodge. MK Woke, that's what woke, Rainbow is all done to dislodge one's personal narrative from the received signal. And so the mastery of it would be to move the signal to the biologically received data. You could call it reality. So you want, if everyone's in the reality bubble, you want to move to the signal to just deal with reality. Because otherwise, if you move the signal, people leave reality and they start like, doing all sorts of unreal things. And that is what we live in, is the executive happy hour gone wrong.
So you have a lot of particular insight regarding some of the social engineering and the origins of it, especially in Canada, which
Yeah.
I was unaware of. Why don't you give me a quick, a condensed version of how they started to implement some of these social conditioning procedures in our country?
Yeah, universities. So basically, let me just get, here we go. Hold on, sorry, bear with me. Lots going on. So these little diagram booklets help me keep it all together, right? So this is MK Woke, how colonial society was rainbowed. How were they queered? And that's not a term degrading to gay people. That is a term from history. When you throw a wrench in the works, it's a documented term. So I say MK Woke, okay? This is the true story of how sociology and covert warfare were combined in Canada to reshape the national psyche. That's a lot, right? It's all true. And the basic structure is in the table of contents. And I'll have to make this available somehow. We'll figure it out. Or I'll figure it out. Sorry to implicate you in it. I will figure it out. And so basically, these are the chapters. And it starts with, in 1940, in England, they were developing a mental health regime in the chaos of warfare. This had to do with soldiers, civilians, everything. And it continued a trajectory, what you call the Fabian incremental social change. But by 1940, it had become institutionalized in the famous Tavistock group, Tavistock Institute. And so one of the leading guys named Dr. Rees, I can read it. I'll read it real quick, and I'm going to read the last sentence first and then read the whole thing through, okay? The two easiest of them naturally are the teaching profession and the church. The two most difficult are law and medicine. And then it starts, okay? We can therefore justifiably stress our particular point of view with regard to the proper development of the human psyche, even though our knowledge be incomplete. We must aim to make it permeate every educational activity in our national life. We have made a useful attack upon a number of professions. The two easiest naturally are teaching and the church. The two most difficult are law and medicine. What did they want to do? Well, one guy, Seeley, he was eager to talk about the military agenda that had recruited him for peacetime projects. Eugenicists planned to use mental hygiene to completely reorganize Canada. Well, what were they trying to reorganize us into? Into something that under no circumstances would reflect our traditions our society values, our religious purposes, our moral beliefs, the idea of right and wrong, those all were be systematically dismantled. First through education, then through the church, then through law, and then through medicine. And if you track it, and that's the military cell, Tavistock Psychological Warfare Group. They work directly with two or three people, Chisholm, Seeley, Cameron, and a bunch of other people, but those three guys. And they bring it to Canada, and they start doing the programs, and they begin with networking and bringing the program into the civilian light with the World Mental Health Organization, part of the United Nations. So we have WHO, but there's also, before that, there was WMHO or whatever, World Mental Health Organization. And they, that was their thing. And they parlayed that into an experiment in Forest Hill called the Forest Hill Project, where Holocaust survivors and Eastern European Jewish people were kind of airlifted and migrated to Forest Hill. And then there was observation of them. And that was the first big sociological study of Eastern European Jewish people, and mostly Eastern European, but some German, in the world. First civilian sociological study of Eastern European displaced people, basically the population of Israel. The first psychological assessment of how they do when you move them was done by Seeley. Seeley did that program, I think, 7 years, and then moved on to another one where he started called Crestwood Heights, where they began to work with disadvantaged youth, began to sociologize those people, but it's an experiment. So then they created York University, and York University had this one-on-one training program, exactly like what we're doing right now. And there would be a transmission of values and exchange, relationships developed, then the data would be sort of like magically transmitted down to you. And then you would all of a sudden be MK woke. And when you got to work, you would be doing any program that was sociologically informed, which includes everything that degrades society, because it's breaking it down. The program is to break down society. Why? Because a atomized society can just be reprocessed as aggregate. So it's like construction. It's a site preparation. So we're right now in a phase where infrastructure is being knocked down, converted to base materials, sold. The mechanisms of doing that are now privatized. The whole economic system of dismantling Canadian infrastructure is just extracting capital and value out of Canada. And it started with sociology, but that was sort of like in Green Berets, right? You send them in first, they win the hearts and minds, they start working with the locals and all that. And then the helicopters come in with the guns and the dope, and then you're all in Air America, if you ever saw that movie. And then you're into the French Connection, and you're running dope for the CIA, and it's killing your neighbors back home. And that's the thing. They opened up the door. They were the ones they were the Green Berets who won the hearts and minds of Canada. And the program, I call it the social front. So they were the social front of the globalization, and MK Ultra was the anti-social front, right? Very antisocial. Everything about MK Ultra is extremely antisocial. There's almost not a single thing that you can look at any part of that program as something that is a humanist. Being a humanist was just not something that would be part of being in that program, from stem to stern. Yeah.
So in your estimation, what are these people, these power systems that initiated this agenda? What are their goals presently, short term and long term? Like, what do they want? I'm not asking you what do you think is going to happen. What is their objectives?
Yeah, I would assess that we're in terminal phase extraction. So this is, they're going to squeeze the zombie tentacle is going to thinks that the resources will get to the zombie, but it's not. It's been severed. Like that, their whole extractive system no longer feeds their brain. Globalization has collapsed. The extractive system no longer feeds them. They can't control any of it. So they'll send these impulses out to like make sure the people don't stray off and do something while they're dying, right? While the octopus is dying. And so its job will be to extract, to squeeze as much juice out, as much essence of Canada out. So the physical state, the philosophical state, the legal state, the medical state, the educational state, it'll just make it a husk. But it's losing its grip. Everyone's escaping. It's over. But just imagine Planet of the Apes, all the humans break free. No apes come chasing after them. What are you going to do? Whoa, we're free. It was a lot. Can we just go back to that thing where we're trapped? That was so much easier. Where we can just complain about the jailers and how corrupt the people who own the prison are, because that was easier. This is hard. We're free. They're not coming after us. If the last ones try, I think there's enough angry people that we won't even have to worry about it from the executive management cadre. We're just thinking about where's the water? What can we use for pipe? How much water do these people need? Where can we get it? Don't put it over there because that's going to run out in 2 years. Let's get that water pipe here because that looks like it's sustainable. Let's do it. A few people come together, and this idea that everyone has to work 20 hours a week, forget it. That's slavery, man. Enough people in any adventure survival situation will form an executive for a day. They will ad hoc leadership. They will execute things. They will do it. They will splinter at some point. They will make different encampments. They will splinter and make different encampments. There will be this general pattern of human behavior. And that's what we've seen. So this thing is now, we've become completely fragmentized into social society. We're socially fragmented uniformly. So what's the one thing that we share as Canadians, other than being Canadian, is that we have been completely artificially torn apart from each other. That's a big thing to share. Somebody robbed you and I of our capacity to do anything meaningful. Well, who the fuck did that? Like, deal. All this stuff. Let's make sure they don't do that shit again. Okay, well, what's the best thing to do? Let's plan, where are we going to get all this stuff? How are you going to do it? And you look around and you're like, hold on. Is that 2 billion acres that belongs to the state? Yeah, 2 billion acres. Like, and they have the mineral rights, the air rights, the soil rights, everything? Yeah. 2 billion acres, soil rights in the New World? Are there any military juntas that, make it ineffective so you couldn't have... No, nothing. It's completely at peace. The country is completely pacified. What do you mean? It's beside America. They've got all... Everybody goes to America to do everything. No, Canada is just this oligarchic, vintage, it's like Venezuela on Xanax. It's like a non-criminal Venezuela. Except for that Xanax is black market. So it actually is.
So you're not at all concerned about technocracy, about the data centers, about getting put into a control grid with digital ID and digital currency, central bank digital currency?
As long as I don't have to carry my digital ID with me to prove to somebody what I am or who I am, and I only have to carry it if I want to go to my bank and take out some cash or buy something at the grocery store or whatever, if that's the only time I need my digital ID, or to get a driver's license or whatever, or when I'm driving my car, instead of a paper license, I have my thing. If that's the only time I need it, then I don't care. If I'm only using the mechanisms that are regulated within state, I don't care. Paperwork, big deal. Now, over time, I think it's pretty important to really think about all systems and run a Doge and say, look, is this idea that this guy has to regulate how many dogs he owns, is that really founded in moral logic? Or is that more like some kind of workaround so people can't breed dogs cheap? So only corporations can breed dogs. You know, like why is this particular municipal ordinance there? And I think doing a Doge to go through every single little regulation to make sure that it's not ideological, or if it is ideological, it adheres with the right ideology. You know, because you got to have an operating system. You have to have an executive mandate. I think that's really something that is profoundly paradoxical with direct democracy and the idea of liberation and all this is, you know, you need an executive, but the executive could easily be the populace through algorithm. You could easily have a triple redundancy system whereby everything that your current oligarchic class does in terms of everything outside their shops, you know, because they're shops, they can do what they want, right? Their farms, all that, so they can do it. But in terms of regulating government policy through their lobbying as monopolies, they couldn't do any of that if all economic policy was decided by the population using our smartphones or our laptops or whatever your preferred device is, or your Google glasses, if you want. But basically, and the thing is, the people who really want to get into stuff, they can get way deep into the weeds on different policy issues. They can be quantum wonks, you know, policy wonks of the quantum era. Or people can just do their meat and potato stuff. I live in this district. They want to put a mine up here. I say no. Looks like it's going to happen. What kind of mine do you want? I'm not happy with this, but I'd rather a mine that was quiet half the day. Okay. Well, people, they accept the mine's going to come in. 80% want the mine, but 80% also want it to just run at night.
But how do we supplant the present oligarchy? Because they're not going to want this future that you're describing.
How did they get here? How did the guy who had the sharpest sword and the best luck on one muddy battlefield, how did him and his progeny take control of everything? Overnight or incrementally? How did the warlord class take over and become our techno oligarchs?
Dirty tricks, incrementally.
Yeah, over centuries.
Mm-hmm.
So the quantum acceleration means we can do it over less than a decade. But let's be realistic. It started in 2015. So it's 11 years now. So it's an issue of decades. This will be done this time 2040.
So you're not concerned about like a devastating world conflict between like Iran, China, America, Russia, Ukraine?
What do you mean? How big a bomb are you going to make? I mean, like, how big a thing can a war be? Even if they wiped out,
pretty big.
Yeah, 1 billion people. Okay, let's see, 1 billion people go missing. Do you think that's going to slow anything down?
Well, I'm not suggesting. I mean, that's not an ideal circumstance for me. I'm not suggesting that humanity is going to stop. Surely we're going to continue, and we're going to become something radically different. We're probably going to go through many cycles before we eventually become something entirely different. But I mean, what I'm saying is like logistically, how does that happen right now? Because right now it seems like the situation is extremely dire, geopolitically and domestically. Like there's chaos domestically, there's economic strife, and then geopolitically, it seems like, and I would say again, this banking class is pushing our nations into conflict. And I think this happened stimulated by the banking class in the 20th century as well. I think that was one of the biggest things that pushed us into these massive conflicts and consolidated their control.
Yeah. The you know, that book MK Woke, this one's about Canada, and the last chapter is all about the economic remedy, and this one's all about the world, but still just has the Canadian economic remedy, because every country is different how they need to respond. But it's a global psychological operation with the Jason Bourne component, right? So they would whack dissidents using mind-controlled zombies and stuff like that. That's all real. and that was hand in hand with the sociology stuff. And then I don't talk about it too much because I haven't figured out how to talk about it in a really good way. But I grew up on a street where, on one hand was the Sealy sociology people, and then the other hand was the MK people, because I grew up with a kid whose parents were part of that whole thing as actual scientists and all that stuff.
You had this occurring in every country. America famously had their Monarch program, and MK Ultra itself. Like,
That was here. I'm telling you, I grew up with a guy who created monarchs, monitored them throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. One showed up at their house one time. Oh, yeah. I grew up with that. Now, to even understand what that would mean, I had to meet a lot of people and go through a lot of closed doors in my imagination. But yeah, that's real. And that's the one side. And the other side was I grew up deeply embedded in the York University Sealy group, deeply embedded. So my actual life reality is I can tell you how it happened. Now then, but the thing is, why would it happen? Why would you set up all that? You're going to do a robbery. Get down on the ground. Okay, tie them up. It's a robbery. It's extractive finance. So globalization was a heist. And when you, okay, so you know how did you ever see Pantera? What's the first one with Gerald, the bank robbery movie? It's great.
I don't believe so.
Shit, it's a Netflix thing. It's but a very sophisticated robber. And he uses an ex-special forces group as their frontman. And so basically you see this bizarre realm of deep state security apparatus being used at the sharp end of transnational organized crime. You see that all happening. The guy that invented the procedures and the mechanisms by which you would use kinetic coercion in the executive class when the sociology didn't work, that is a guy, that's a single Canadian guy who basically invented that whole program. And even what you say is the American monarch thing, that's all Canadian, invented all that. That's all Canadian. That's from Whitby.
So this was developed in Canada, but it was
100%.
then exported through most of the Anglosphere.
100%. It was actually developed. So it's a tripart. It's a trinational. It's a binational development because it's Tavistock. So it's Tavistock, OSS. And then, as Alex Jones says, the CIA is OSS. It's like, yeah, basically. And OSS is basically Tavistock. But the thing is, Tavistock is psychology. All that other stuff is actually like kinetic. And so they're totally different. But the MK woke is all in the executive headspace, cognitive warfare. So you'll also hear that as a new word, cognitive warfare. So we have extractive finance and cognitive warfare are the new buzzwords of the pepisphere, the pepisphere, the Q zone, right? But the thing is, what was Q is now Q. What I mean by that is, what used to be the military intelligence communique called Q has transformed to the Jihan Ghomeshi show called Q. You are Jihan Ghomeshi, and I'm Billy Bob Thornton. This is the new paradigm. You are Q. And I don't mean the military intelligence. I mean the CBC TV show. See, we've come so far. It's so far in advance, the quantum reality that we're working in. We don't even understand it in terms of its implication in relativity to the analog pre-quantum world. So this all sounds like a bit weird and stuff, I guess, but we're not time travelers. Everybody's delayed. The bus is a bit, they're coming. They're coming. I just got a call from the driver. They're coming. They're on their way. And why are they coming? They want to know about this. They want the $1 million for free. They want to learn how the fiat economy is not a bad thing. They want to learn how nationalism has nothing to do with Nazis. They want affirmation that the globalist elite are communist scumbags. They want this affirmation. And they want it because it's the new headspace. they want to know, like, what's so hot about these guys? Because they're followers. They were following before. They're resisting the future. The future's indomitable. They will follow the future. I know that sounds a bit Machiavellian and stuff, but it's Machiavellian. The thing is, you just can't, but you're talking about power. You're talking about moving the Overton window of the capstone of Western society. This is mega superstructure, philosophical orchestration, right? And that is what everybody who devises Wexit or Brexit or MAGA or Bukele in El Salvador, I don't know if he had a name for his operation, but everybody who devises these quantum operations and deploys them, they are fighting a cognitive war to move the capstone of Western society. And I can say it feels like Blackstone's already like BlackRock, I'm sorry. And it feels like BlackRock is already kind of not that fast. It's not that cool anymore. I don't think people like BlackRock, right? I think people are into something else.
Yeah. I hope you're right, man. You're very optimistic. You're always an absolute pleasure to have a conversation with. I love your conversational style. It's it always keeps me on my toes. But we went through all of our time, unfortunately. I want you to do me a favor, Michael, and post any documents you can underneath our stream so any of the audience can check it out. And before we go, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you?
On X, I guess it's Falconer Adamson. I use my middle name because my full name was taken up, so I just use my middle name and my last name, Falconer Adamson. Yeah. I think do you mean leave something in the chat here?
No. Right under the link. Like there'll be a link of this, a physical link on X, and then you could just put some documentation, like some documents right underneath that link, and then people can find it.
Yeah. I really appreciate this opportunity to share this material because it's of vital importance. I feel like an alien. I feel like, a time traveler. It's of vital importance that the people of Earth understand what's coming and what they need to do. They need to make an informed decision. Here's the information that you need to make a decision on. It's tough going, right?
I agree, brother. With that said, though, I want to thank you again. I want to thank everyone else for watching as well. And I will appeal to the audience at this point. If you guys can share the stream, it's very advantageous for me. So with that said, until next time, this is Dumb the Wiser. I'm JP Berg. Cheers.
JP. Bye. Thanks for having me.
Take care, Michael.